Before you can get the most out of your poker software, you'll need to know what the information such tools provide really means, such as PFR or Preflop raising percentage, the subject of this video. All poker software tools have this, as it's one of the most relied upon indicators because it can help you understand what range of hands your opponent will raise with. So, preflop raising is rather much straightforward, at least on the surface. This statistic is very representative of a player's overall aggressiveness, but it's not the complete story, so let's have a closer look. PFR percentage is how many times a player raises before the flop, divided by how many hands dealt to that player. The higher this number is, the more unpredictable your opponent will be. Now, if we go back to the Schoonmaker profile grid, the VPIP is represented on the tight-loose scale because it's easy to measure this statistic of how many hands a player plays. But when you're talking about raising, in this case pre-flop raising, it affects the passive-aggressive scale because this explains how the player entered the pot. Did he limp, raise, or call? For instance, if he doesn't pre-flop raise a lot, he would be more on the passive side. If he pre-flop raises more, then he would be tending toward the aggressive side. Now, if you combine these two scales, that should be an approximate profile gauge of your opponent, at least at a glance. However, there's much more complexity to raising than there is just deciding to play a hand. That's because you can raise, you can re-raise, you can 3-bet, you can c-bet, and re-raise even more on subsequent rounds. So the full variety of raising tactics also factors into a player's aggressive style. For now, let's clarify that pre-flop raising is when a player raises before the flop. That could mean a raise or a re-raise. It does not mean calling, even if a player has called a raise, like in this case. Any flat call would simply be added to his VPIP stat. Now, for example, at a full table of 9 or 10 players, a normal range for pre-flop raising would be around 6 to 10% for a typical tight aggressive opponent. Higher than that tends to indicate more aggressive opponents, and lower than that would tend to indicate a passive opponent. Of course, everything is always situational and can change radically depending on other players' styles, table size, game structure, and stack sizes. We now know two of the factors that regular cash game players will look at immediately when deciding to play a hand or make a play against an opponent. In fact, you may often read in blog posts or in poker training videos that an opponent is, for example, 32-19. Well, at 32-19, a player would be VPIPing 32% and pre-flop raising 19% of his hands. You could expect a wide range of hands from this player, many of them being moderate or even weak hole cards but played aggressively. Conversely, a 12-6 player who only comes into the pot 12% of the time and only raises 6% would be very selective in their hands and then likely ahead of most of your hole cards. So for example, if I was holding ace-jack offsuit against one of these players, I would be inclined to re-raise Arnold here, and quickly muck my hand pre-flop if Meryl Streep, especially dressed as a nun, raised the pot before me. Although this is a simplified version, the numbers and decisions are very real and common in game scenarios.
You will lose.
Imagine just for a moment playing without this information. No history, no profile, no picture clues. Well, how do you play your ace-jack against either one of them now? Of course, it's not so clear as to what strategy you should use, is it? That's why good players use poker software. A lot of skilled players will only look at those two factors in a preliminary sense, and then when the hand gets more involved, they will use their poker software to look deeper into that player's entire profile. Most software tools have multiple options for how the information is displayed, such as a HUD feature right over top the player avatar. Then, if you want deeper stats, you can just mouse over that avatar, and a lot more data is instantly available to you. But if you choose not to have a HUD, the indicator products, for example, offer both the HUD and attached view, so you can choose whichever view you like. Personally, I like my tables more clean looking. Okay, that's it for the PFR video, and we've already covered VPIP. So you can check the next video for AF, or aggression factor, where it's going to help us pinpoint our opponent's playing styles even more. Thanks for watching. A special thanks for Meryl Streep and Arnold Schwarzenegger for guest starring in this video.